Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of Critic Reviews with your host, Arlyeon. On today's episode, I'll be talking about No Fuel Games puzzle platformer Alien Escape. Find out if this gravity-altering game was a runaway hit, or if I would have preferred being probed. Interstellar disco parties are pretty lit, but they're not necessarily conducive to safe driving. Which is why our alien protagonists find themselves crash-landed in front of an eerie castle, and then imprisoned for all of a few moments later. And that's the story. I mean, yes, there's an ending sequence and all that, but there's not really a whole lot going on in the narrative department here. Which leaves us with the gameplay, and I have words. I have so many words. But key amongst them are simply, for the love of God, let me remap my controls, goddammit. I mean, there's controller support, that's a thing, but given that I decided to play with a keyboard, I found myself A, figuring out the controls manually since there's no list of what all the buttons are, and then B, managing an altogether uncomfortable keyboard setup. It definitely didn't feel like it was made with a QWERTY keyboard in mind. That said, if you're able to get by that hurdle or have a gamepad handy, what you'll be presented with is a fairly bite-sized but enjoyable puzzle platformer. Albeit one where you can't jump. Rather, you navigate the world by flipping the screen around, and therefore changing the gravity of the room. That is, so long as you're sitting down on the ground, since if you end up launching yourself in a free fall towards some spikes, you can't adjust gravity to save yourself. Also, be mindful of boxes. I've been guilty of turning myself into pizza a large number of times. Whilst the overall depth of the puzzles start out fairly straightforward, they do become increasingly complex as you venture forth. Not just in the overall design of the level, but also with the sort of obstacles and environmental objects that you'll be dealing with. Honey, for instance, lets you stand on walls sideways, and water leads to things floating upwards. Whatever directions up is in a given moment anyways. I'll admit that I genuinely found myself stumped by a number of the puzzles as I progressed, especially in a few of them that involved freeing a captive and ensuring that they survive till the end. Whilst a number of these are fairly straightforward, some of the later ones were absolutely phenomenally challenging. And for those with a competitive streak, or who'd like to see everything, there are scores to compete against in the various stages, based off a combination of your total clear time as well as the number of times that you altered gravity in a given stage. Manage to get all of the stages at 3 stars and you'll unlock, well, something. There's a disco party achievement that I haven't unlocked, so I'm going to guess it's tied to that, since I only actually managed to get 71% of the altogether star score possible. Now, whilst I don't have anything too bad to say about the game's audio, it didn't really stick out to me for the most part. Like, there's a very distinct elevator music vibe to the stage music for the most part, which sort of fits with the quirkiness of the game, but it is ultimately very forgettable. Alien Escape's visual style is also fairly nice, and does nothing to impede the player's ability to enjoy the game. I mean, there's a few moments where I was busy trying to juggle an item into a narrow position like an idiot, but that was more because I did something wrong than the game actually relying on pixel-perfect timing. And thus, we've reached the conclusion of this little review, and I have to say, it wasn't bad. It made for a pleasant afternoon, and I did enjoy solving all the puzzles as I proceeded through the game. The final encounter was somewhat interesting, even if I did dunk on it in no time flat compared to the things that came before it. But all of this somewhat pales compared to the simple fact that its keyboard controls are absolutely atrocious. And there's no way to fix them. Like, a very large chunk of the game time was spent trying to get used to them and grudging them the whole way through, and that stands out in my mind. Which is why I'd ultimately rate this game as a fumble instead of a hit. It's not bad, but it certainly handicaps folks who are aiming to enjoy this game without a controller. That said, thanks for tuning in. If you agree, disagree, or just have something to say to me, feel free to comment. And for those interested in more indie game reviews, developer interviews, podcasts, or our Monday TTRPG content, hit the subscribe button and the bell so you know when there's new releases. There's also a Discord. You can feel free to click the link in the banner or the description so you can become a part of our community, the Crit Hit Cauldron. Lastly, if you'd like to help support the channel, we do have a Ko-fi running now to help supplement funds for our lovely editor, and to make sure we can continue to provide quality content, or eat. Eating is good. Again, check the description and the banner for them links, and if you folks think we should eventually get a Patreon, feel free to let me know in the comments. Other than that, I'll catch you on the next episode of Crit Hit. Take care till then, folks.